So I wanted to create a little bit of step, right? So there's an inside imagination and the outside 3D physical world. Yeah. The outside 3D physical world exists, and some of the outside 3D physical world are very pleasant. Other part of the 3D physical world might be not satisfying. Yeah. Not satisfying based on the desire. Satisfaction is always connected to the desire, right? If you want more of something, the current situation might not be satisfying. Yeah. And there is an expectation and a desire and assumption in life, depending on how we are living. That's how the dissatisfaction or satisfaction is formed. Let me give you an example. And I want to use an example of money because it's easy to understand. If you have $100, you might not be satisfied if you're living in the US, especially. But if you have $100 and if you're living in India, that's like a rent. Yeah. So the level of satisfaction depends on the desire, and the desire can be connected to the environment that you're living in, right? So the currency is different. So depending on where you're living, or depending on the desire of what kind of life you want to be living, the dissatisfaction is different. So the outside 3D physical world exists and the inside imagination exists, and we're playing with. What we see in the 3D physical world is also an imagination. So in this, let's just call stage one, what we want to practice is to discern what we want to give energy to and meaning to in the 3D physical world, and discern if something is feeling lack, to not to energize that lack, but go to your imagination inside where you can create whatever that is that you want to be creating. So we want to use the power of imagination conveniently, right? But if we're not aware of how we can use the power of imagination conveniently, the imagination is going to begin using us in our life, just like anything else, right? So if we're not aware that we're imagining always, and if we're not aware that imagination is active all the time, the next moment you might notice that, oh, I started to use imagination to feel worried about next week. Or I'm noticing that I'm using my imagination to project something that even exists in the 3D physical world. And I'm using my imagination against myself or my desire. So imagination is the seed of creation. Imagination is what changes, transform the undifferentiated into a differentiation. The There's no form and move into form, from non-concept to conception. Yeah, unconditioned to condition is what's being created through imagination. The spiritual being of who we are is unconditional. There's no condition. The minds that giving opinion about the spirituality, that's not who we are. It's the mind that's giving condition to unconditional, right? So the moment we turn what's alive into words or into the dimension of the mind, the unconditional move into condition, because that's what the words and the mind is meant for. And the imagination is a critical part of giving condition, birthing the condition through the unconditional. And unconditional is infinite, condition are finite. So, but then in order for something to move into the 3D physical dimension, it needs to be conditioned, because if everything in the 3D physical world is unconditional, which will not exist, cannot, it needs to contain as a 3D physical something in order for the thing to exist in the 3D physical world. That's why we, the soul, spiritual being, were gifted the physical body so we can live and come to this physical plane, right? And the mind is an invisible thing, but it gives a condition. So the imagination that we were gifted in our mind is a tool and an instrument and a gateway to move the unconditional into a concept, a condition to be able to create in the physical world. Because we're living in the 3D physical world, which is the world of having and doing, because the physical dimension is a dimension of the material and an object, creating something means to birth into the physical form. Yeah. So then the imagination inside and the outside 3D physical world, we want to use the inside to be the cause of what we want to create, instead of reacting to what you see or what you don't see in the 3D physical world to create doubt and worry or lack in our imagination. I'm not talking about anything that you do not know. Just so you know, right? I'm not talking about anything about you do not know, right? I'm just kind of framing and packaging in a certain way so something in what I just said in the last 10 minutes can resonate with you a little bit. So this is stage one. Stage two, we must understand the mechanism between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Yeah. Conscious mind is what sees and what thinks, the language, the words, and the concept. I think Shantai is using her computer. Yeah. So that when we say image or when we say concept, it's in the mind, in the conscious mind. It's kind of interesting. The name floats around like a mosquito. And your subconscious mind is the feeling and the sensation. Yeah. So your body is your subconscious mind. And the number one focus that I had yesterday, the truth inside needs to change. This truth needs to change in the dimension of the subconscious mind. So we often talk about accepting. The subconscious mind must accept. The conscious. I'm just gonna draw a line. The conscious mind understand intellectually. When you embody the understanding, that's when the subconscious mind actually finally accepts the truth of the intellectual information. So let's go back to the example that I was talking about earlier. The conscious mind understand that believing is seen because the inside is the cause of the outside. But until we accept this truth that the conscious mind understand, which is believing is seen, right? And we need to go a little bit deeper. Why believing is seen is true? Because we are spiritual being. Because consciousness is the one and the only cause of the reality. Because the mechanism of the universe and the loss of being, loss of nature is there's a cause and effect, and the inside and the outside mirror, and there's a cause and effect relationship, right? So when we begin understanding that, and when we embody that we're a spiritual being, the understanding moved to embodiment, which means the information moved from the conscious mind intellectually into a subconscious mind as a felt sense. And that's when we accept an idea. And when we let the subconscious mind accept an idea, we call this embody. So letting the subconscious mind to accept an idea is what we're going to be focusing on. So that's the stage number 2. Stage number 3. We are back to inside and the outside. But the stage number 1 inside was imagination, right? And the outside was the 3D reality. We're going to be looking at this stage number 3, inside and outside, from a different angle. Now, the inside is your subconscious. The subconscious state that you're in, so I cannot spell subconscious. And the feeling that you have subconsciously, what you're accepting subconsciously, what is true for you subconsciously, is always going to be the mirror of what you imbibe from and through the infinite intelligence universe. Yeah. So
Can you say that again,
uh-huh.
please?
Yeah. So the inside is the subconscious mind, our inside subconscious mind. So we talked about conscious mind and subconscious mind. Yeah. That's the inside. Now the outside is the outside universe. Now, this is just for the sake of explaining, right? I don't believe that the universe is in the outside. Just like the video that I was playing at the beginning, I was saying that universe is within you, universe is outside of you, but that's where I'm going, right? One of the things that Bob often said is that your subconscious mind is a part of the infinite universal intelligence. So there's no separation between your subconscious mind and the infinite universal intelligence. That's why we attract what the subconscious mind is vibrating at, because it's interconnected, right? So I'm going to go through from the number 1 to number 2, number 3 in a moment, but let me just talk about number 3. So the practice that we want to do, this is going to be really weird, everybody, depending on where you are. The practice that we want to do is, you know, the only the cause of suffering is that the assumption of separation, right? The loss of contact with the whole. The loss of contact with the whole, right? We came here on Earth and we separated from the mother, and we start forming an individual identity, and then we start being told that we need to be independent, and we start creating your individual personality and character and profession, and we start, even the intellectual mind saying that, okay, we are all one, the subconscious mind is not accepting that truth, right? So what has been beneficial for me to really begin implementing is that your subconscious mind is your body. And then if you look at the body, you have the visible stuff from the outside, but your subconscious mind is your felt sense of self. And that feeling needs to be no separate from the universe as a whole. Now, when I say this, we want to stop kind of intellectualizing in the mind what that means, because then we're up on our head, conscious mind. Your subconscious mind is the felt sense of self. And that sense of self, oh, this is so good. The individual sense of self needs to be felt no different from divine power. Yeah. So when you have a concept of self, right? The imagination, and in a conscious mind, you have a conception of you, the conditioned version of you, the personality version of you. And then when that move into the subconscious part of it, it becomes a little bit more intangible because feeling is less tangible than words or thinking. And this inside of the subconscious ultimately is the felt sense of self. Yeah. Felt sense. This is a language that I love using. Sense of self. Who is the self, right? Who am I conceptually? That felt sense of self needs to align with the infinite power. So there's no separation. The moment you start feeling you, no separate from the infinite universe, the intelligence, then you will be demonstrating through your awareness that you're connected and your inside and outside becomes one. That's how much we want to begin exercising your awareness of you, right? Now, either you really felt inspired and touched by what I just said, or you got really confused. And then you got really confused and begin thinking, what is this guy talking about even, right? It's either or, right? Either is fine, depending, people are in a different place. And if you feel called to watch it again, you can watch it again, right? So let's come back to this, right? The inside image, the stage one practice. So there's going to be practice in each stage, right? Because the goal is to really understand what imagination, what self is, and the goal is to master the creative mechanism, the mechanism creation. Yeah. And mastering the mechanism of creation happens when we actually deliberately able to accept an idea in the subconscious mind. Oh, Travis flew in to the white box and he just left. So there, Travis is flying. So acceptance of the subconscious mind is what we want to master. Yeah. So in order to master that, we want to do some practices. So practices number one is, okay, there's an imagination. That's okay. You're still flying, Travis. I see your name here. There, right? There are multiple Travis flying. Okay. Imagination inside and the 3D physical world outside. Are we clear with the practice? The practice is to know that we're imagining all the time and noticing when we're imagining something against our desire or against ourselves. What I mean by against ourselves is that if you're starting to feel discouraging because you didn't see something that you wanted to see in the outside, we're using our imagination against us. Yeah. And then we're buy into the evidence in the outside and making that true for us. This is so good because the moment you're imagining against you, it means that you're buying into the absence of the evidence of sight outside and telling ourselves that that is true, that is me. Right? But what we want to do is the inside imagination is the seed of creation. Believing is seen. If I don't see what I want to see in the outside, we don't buy that idea, but we come back to the imagination to construct the condition that we want to create internally. And then begin, this is the key, and then begin believing in that idea. It's interesting, not to jump around with different conversation. I don't think there's nothing wrong with negative thoughts. I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking negatively. But the problem is that people begin believing that that is true. Yeah. When we have a thought about something, thought itself is okay. It's gonna happen. Whatever the mind wants to think, you're gonna think, right? But when the thought happens in your mind, we start believing that that is true, that's when the emotion kicks in, right? That's when you start entertaining and giving energy to the thought itself. So many people meditate or create silence to be able to stop thinking. We cannot stop thinking. The mind, you can create space and slow down and begin noticing what you're even thinking about when you practice silence and meditation. However, the goal of meditation or silence is not to stop thinking, because the function of the mind is to think, just like the function of the lung is to breathe, right? So we don't need to try to stop, but we want to understand actually what we're choosing to think and what actually even we're believing about what we are thinking. Thinking itself doesn't mean that we're believing, but it comes. And when we start believing that the thoughts are true, that's when it becomes harmful, right? So the usage of imagination is to really understand when we want to give an energy to that imagination and harness it, and when we want to pay attention to the imagination that is not congruent with the desire, and to pivot. So one practice that we want to do here in this stage one is to recognize what kind of imagery we're ending up creating by focusing on the outside. In other words, how much are we giving energy to the lack and producing the imagination based on the lack? Notice that and people immediately to harness and entertain a different imagery inside of us that serves ourself and the desire. Okay, stage number two practice is the distinction between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So subconscious mind cannot hear the term no, not, right? So if I tell you to not to think about dog, you just all thought about dog, right? Because the subconscious mind cannot ignore the term no. So if we say, oh, I don't want this, I don't want anxiety, I don't want this and this and this, you are affirming the exact thing that you are not wanting. So of course you want to focus on the desire and what it is that you want, to picture that and to give energy to it. And whatever that you this is like a little poetic. Whatever that you impress upon your subconscious mind must express as a physical form. That's one of the characteristics of the subconscious mind, right? Whatever that you're impressing into your subconscious mind must express in the physical form. So what we want to understand is, what is it that we are actually automatically impressing into the subconscious mind that we don't want to actually express, right? And the tricky part of this is this is where the idea of time comes in a little bit. When you look at things in the change and transformation from a linear timeline perspective, there is some before and after. And then people think that there's a timeline, the time frame that the change occurs from before into after. But psychologically and energetically speaking, the change is going to more effectively occur when you actually decide that you are already changed now and then begin choosing that identity. And here's why. Because the moment you think and tell yourself that I am right here and I want to go right here, this is my goal to get there. Because you're expressing yourself all the time, you're self-defining SD, this is not San Diego, self-defining yourself, expressing that I am a person who wants to get over there, right? Even though you're thinking that in your mind. So that's why you want to actually choose to be here, even though the outside circumstance is not looking like you're here. And because I can create imagination in an imagination, anything I want, neutralizing the outside 3D physical world. And because if I use my conscious mind awareness and free will to impress onto the subconscious mind, by law, it must express in the physical form, then I'm going to choose to be here using the imagination and creating a felt sense of self right now. So the outside universe is going to mirror my inside subconscious state by being here right now, because the universe and the outer world responds to who you're demonstrating yourself as right now, not in the future. So your subconscious mind cannot hear the term not. Your subconscious mind is going to express whatever that's being impressed. Your subconscious mind cannot discern imagination and 3D physical world, and subconscious mind only knows to live in the now because your body is your subconscious mind. So your mind can think that, okay, this is where I'm going in the future. The body doesn't know. The body only knows what you're being right now. So you begin using all those mechanisms that I talked about, right? The usage of imagination, the characteristics of subconscious mind, conscious mind, how the outside start mirroring our inside, and form a practice to be in that place that you want to be, whatever that life situation, circumstance that you're choosing, and to be in that frequency right now, regardless of the outside circumstance. Then, when you choose to create a felt sense of self internally in your subconscious, the universe must mirror, because inside of you and the outside of you are one. And the more you start seeing your felt sense of self no separate from the divine power that's operating the universe, and the more you start becoming familiar with that connection internally, the more effective the shift occurs, because then you're at the cellular level stepping into the identity, the conception of the infinite applying into yourself individually.